Hello my friends, it's Ranger Russ from the Meigs Nature Center, although today I'm coming to you from a place called Hope. We have a very special program today. We're going to be talking about and meeting with a bald eagle. And there it is right there.
Good morning everybody, it's Christine from a place called Hope. And good morning to our Enapai, our beautiful American bald eagle. This gorgeous example of an eagle, she came to us all the way from Iowa, where she was learning how to hunt in her first year of life, which was in 2015, when unfortunately for her, she dove into the Mississippi River and she ended up crashing into the river so hard that she broke her right wingtip. So she damaged her right wing enough that the feather follicles do not grow back. So she has a shorter right wing. You can see that. I hope you can see that. So she is what we call a non-releasable or non-flighted eagle because of it. It does not mean that she can't run, hop, skip, and jump like the wind. But when she did that injury in the Mississippi River in Iowa, it took 3 days for her her rescuers, to get her off of a log jam. She was in the middle of the Mississippi River, washed up on a log jam, in real trouble, not able to fly, not able to hunt. So when they got her, she was in pretty rough shape, and she was brought to Quincy, Illinois, where she was rehabilitated. That is where our story began, because in Quincy, Illinois, they had a lot of eagles that they were rehabilitating, that they were releasing, because of course, as wildlife rehabilitators, our goal is to always fix the problem and send them back to the environment whenever possible. Unfortunately for some of the birds, they don't all get to go back to freedom because of their limitations, like Enapai's. So they looked for a home for her because they already had so many eagles that needed homes and so many eagles that worked at their center. They needed to place her. So that's when a place called Hope acquired our eagle permit, and she became our first resident living with us permanently, bald eagle. Her name, Enapai, is a Native American name from the Sioux language. It means appears bravely. Now, Enapai is still new to programming. She had debuted back before COVID hit. She was really hot on the trail out there doing her thing, and then things have kind of slowed down. Well, I'm not going to say kind of. Things have slowed down to the point where we are no longer doing a lot of programs, and Enapai has not been out very often. She's been only out a few times since March, so we are still considering this part of her training at this point because we lost some time and some ground there. She is appearing bravely. She is appearing grand and beautiful because she is. She's got her feathers on top of her head up out of curiosity as she's looking around in her courtyard this morning. What's really nice about sharing Enapai in her own comfort zone and space is that this is all familiar to her, this area. The camera, of course, is not, the table is not, but this area is what she looks out upon every single day of her life. Her aviary is behind us in the far back, and she's got an upper perch that she sits on so she can view what's going on. Now, our residence, where Todd and I both live, is behind you. And when I come out in the morning with the food to feed everybody, Enapai's the first one to greet me from such a great distance. She sees me coming and she does her sound. I know that we probably didn't prepare ourselves to have the sound of the bald eagle. Does anyone have any sound bite of the bald eagle? But it's an interesting sound that they do make because a lot of people don't understand that it's an eagle when they hear it the first time, or when they hear it and they've heard it many times before, because the sound of the bald eagle is often replaced with the actual call of the red-tailed hawk. So whenever you see a bald eagle, or any large bird for that matter, even vultures, sometimes in movies, sometimes in commercials, you'll often hear the call of the red-tailed hawk being played. And that's because the call of the red-tailed hawk is so fierce and noble, like this incredible bird. You expect a very strong and fierce, noble call. But the call of the bald eagle is very, well, shorebird-like. It sounds a little bit like a gull. I'm hoping you can hear that. Enapai certainly hears it. Who's that, Enapai? We don't mean to upset you. She is definitely looking. Enapai shares space at our center with another bald eagle. Her name is Tiasu. Tiasu means one who uses intuition to make decisions. Tiasu is 3.5. Enapai is 5. If you come to visit us on a tour, you'll find out that bald eagles don't have the white head and the white tail until they're truly in their 5th year of life. And even then, they're still molting in the true stark white coloration. They're still going under changes, but it's really obvious that you're looking at a bald eagle when it's from, let's say, 4 years of age on, maybe 3.5, because they start to model in more whites. But before that, they are confusing to a lot of people because bald eagle subadults, youngsters, actually look a lot like, if you don't know the bird, the golden eagle. They're more browns. They don't have the stark white head, the stark white tail. They have a very dark black beak. They have dark eyes. So it's very misleading. When you look at a bald eagle adult, you know immediately what you're looking at because of the white head, the white tail, the yellow beak, and those beautiful golden eyes. Enapai, being 5 this year, is actually molting in the rest of her white feathers around her eyes. She still has what we call eyeshadow. She's got a lot of decoration still of some light browns behind and underneath her eye, and her eyes are two-toned in color right now. She has some beautiful golden shining through the brown. She is gorgeous. She's pretty much changed her entire beak color except for one freckle on her right side. But for the most part, she signifies to other bald eagles that yes, indeed, she is sexually mature. She's old enough to start her own family, whereas Tiasu still has all the dark coloration and is in the browns. Bald eagles, it's a word that actually means white-headed. It does not mean bald as in no hair or no feathers, like the turkey vulture. We're going to have Todd come over and start talking. I'm going to take Enapai and just back up a little bit so Todd could be in the front here. You'll still see her on the screen, and I'm hoping that some of you will start asking some questions.
Yeah, please do ask questions. So bald eagles are one of the largest birds that we have in all of North America. It's also important to note here that bald eagles are only found in North America.
Enapai's 10.2 pounds.
Good point there. Enapai weighs 10.2 pounds, but some of the bald eagles up north in Alaska can weigh up to 15 pounds. Females are heavier than the males. And like Christine was saying, the word white is actually an Old English word meaning the color, or the word bald is an Old English word meaning the color white. And that's where they get the name bald eagle. And you can see here on a mature eagle's feather, and I don't know if she mentioned that they reach maturity at the age of 5. Bald eagles are a really good example of migratory birds. We have quite a few migratory birds here in Connecticut. We're on the east coast of the United States. And what's interesting is most of the migratory birds of prey that we have here actually migrate into Connecticut during the winter rather than migrate south. 24 birds of prey species in Connecticut, and out of the 24 species that we have here, only 3 of them actually migrate south from here. I know if I was a bird and I got to Connecticut in the winter, I would keep going. We do have some pretty severe winters here, but it's not about the weather. It's really about an abundance of food. So the migratory birds are going to travel as far as they need to go until they find an abundance of food that will sustain them through the winter. And like I was saying, bald eagle is a really good example of that. So bald eagles eat fish. And here in Connecticut, we have the Connecticut River, which runs all the way up to northern New Hampshire, probably about 300 to 400 miles long. Now, all the eagles that hunt and nest and have territories on the Connecticut River have to come south during the winter as the river starts to freeze up north. 90% of their diet is going to be fish, and they need open water to actually hunt fish. And if the river freezes, they have to follow the river south until there's open water where they can hunt. Now, about 4 years ago, we had a real severe winter, and the Connecticut River froze all the way down to Essex in Connecticut, which is almost at the mouth of the Long Island Sound. So that particular year, we had a lot of bald eagles congregating in one spot looking for food. So that's a good example of migratory birds.
We have a question. Someone would like to know if it's possible that they will become a mated pair, or that she might end up with a male.
Well,
Excellent question. Hear me? I'm going to talk loud, and hopefully it won't upset my friend here, Enapai. Enapai is a female, and Tiasu happens to also be a female. So there will be no babies happening. Bald eagles really do mate for life. Like all birds, they are going to find a mate at some point and stick with that mate unless something should happen to that mate. So we sometimes say they mate for life, mourn for a minute, but the truth is Enapai and Tiasu are not a mated pair. I would say that within the same aviary, Enapai shares the space, Tiasu as well, with a black vulture named Onyx, who is also a girl. I'm going to say that Enapai and Onyx are actually partners at this point because they started out together. And when Onyx lays eggs, which she did for the first time last year, Enapai actually will get in front of the enclosure door to guard her while she sits on the nest. So it's a really sweet relationship that these two have developed. They've been together a lot longer because when Enapai first came to a place called Hope, she was alone. And remember I said she came from a center where there were a lot of other eagles. Well, not here. We just had the ones that would come through in rehab, and they don't typically get to share the same space. So when we put Onyx in, it was because both birds needed basically avian enrichment and partners. And these two have fast become best friends. And unfortunately, that means Tiasu's kind of the odd girl out. She is adjusting and adapting to sharing this space now. That's new. We just actually introduced her into the space this year, because before that she lived in an aviary next door to where Enapai and Onyx were. So it's a new relationship, but because Enapai is non-flighted and Tiasu is fully flighted, there's a little bit of a competition problem. Enapai does not enjoy all the movement and the flight ability that Tiasu possesses. Now, if there were a male that came along that were non-flighted and ended up being a resident here at a place called Hope, yes, he would be put in with our eagles after some time learning about each other through a wall. And then I guarantee you they would not become a quote-unquote active mated pair where they would actually have any babies. Because in our rehab licensing or possession licensing, first of all, we're not allowed to let babies hatch. And second of all, a baby hatched in captivity would never learn how to be free and wild, which is, of course, is our ultimate goal. We don't want to keep any babies here at a place called Hope. We want to put them back into the care of their parents in the wild, not in captivity with parents that cannot teach them how to hunt and how to fly and how to ride the thermals, which is very important for birds. They need to learn how to go up. In the captive environment, there's a limitation on space, and there's of course a limitation on nesting materials. And some of you may know that bald eagle nests are built upon every single season when they return, and each year they do get heavier and larger. What was the weight that Kathy and Mindy from RiverQuest, we just went on the RiverQuest swallow tour and saw 22 bald eagles 2 nights ago. Was that 2 nights ago? And it was an amazing trip up the Connecticut River, and we saw 22 different bald eagles. And there was a nest there that she was saying weighed
Close to 1,000 pounds. I know there's one in Florida that's 12
to the
feet
mic.
wide and 12 feet deep, and they're estimating that particular nest, one of the largest they've ever found, at 2,800 pounds.
2,800 pounds. That's very heavy. It's amazing that the trees and where they're choosing to nest can actually withstand that weight. And I know in some cases the nests do get so large that they do fail. But there will be no baby eagles here at a place called Hope unless we have rescued one. And our goal again would be to get it back into the care of its rightful parents, back in the wild, because birds are best raised by birds.
Another really interesting fact, Christine had mentioned how high they fly. Bald eagles can actually fly upwards of 10 to 15,000 feet. And when they reach those altitudes, they can actually soar for hours without even flapping their wings. Pretty amazing. And that's one of the big connections with native culture and the bald eagle. With a lot of different cultures around the world, they saw these birds as being sacred. All the eagles, all the large birds. And one of the reasons is because they fly so high. And they make the connection between how high they fly and the Creator, because they're flying up to the heavens. A lot of religions do the same thing, always reaching to the heavens. So 10 to 15,000 feet is pretty high. But having said that, they can also fly at about 65 miles an hour when they're on the thermals. On average, a bald eagle is in flight is going to reach speeds of around 35 miles an hour. But they can also reach speeds of about 100 miles an hour during a dive. So there are hundreds of different native nations around North America that have been here for thousands of years. And a couple of the other connections between the native nations and the bald eagle would be, other than their connection to the Creator. So when the eagle flies, he actually carries our prayers up to the Creator. Kabu Kamishi Manahut Manatu, which means let the four winds carry our prayers to the Creator. So it's all about reaching up to the sky and connecting to the Creator. So there are a lot of different nations around North America that saw the bald eagle as sacred. I'm going to talk about one in particular, which was what we know as the Mohawk Nation, which became a part of the Six Nations, or the Haudenosaunee, which means the people of the Longhouse, also referred to as the Iroquois, which is actually a French word referring to these nations. Now you had 6 different nations that joined together and formed an alliance, and each one of these nations had a different setup for feathers that they wore, and different feathers that they wore, and different numbers of feathers. And the Mohawk Nation in particular had 3 feathers, 3 eagle feathers on top of the head that pointed straight up to the Creator. And that's what would identify the Mohawk from all of the other nations in the 6 nations.
So having said that and touched upon feathers, first of all, I'm hoping you can all hear us okay. Let us know if you're having trouble hearing, and we'll make Todd get closer so he can talk directly into the mic. I have a very loud voice, but talking about these feathers, they are protected just like these birds are. So they are under a federal law of protection, meaning we can't keep all the feathers that our birds will molt. Every season, the birds will drop old feathers to replace them with new. They do it about twice a year. And all the eagle feathers that we gather must be sent in to the government, to the repository, where these feathers are then sorted and cleaned and distributed to the proper Native American cultures for ceremonial garb, basically. So they are distributed to that there will no longer be any lack of feathers for ceremonial purpose.
Right, and when you have a feather, what that feather does is, if you're wearing it or holding it, that feather actually acknowledges the Creator. And when you acknowledge the Creator, he acknowledges you back. So to wear a feather or to have a connection directly to the creator. So they're used a lot in ceremony. Another big connection between bald eagles and native culture is the fact that they're so powerful. Bald eagles can produce about 800 pounds per square inch of crushing pressure with 1 foot.
And up to 1,000.
And up to 1,000 pounds per square inch of crushing pressure. Just to kind of put that into perspective, they can crush a cat skull like you can crush an egg. So they have about 10 times the amount of power in their feet as we do in one hand. So again, back to the native culture, bald eagles were seen as a symbol of power, strength, and vision for those reasons. Now the vision, bald eagles have one of the best visions of any birds in North America. They say that they can see a mouse up to 3 miles away. So when they're soaring really high, they have really good vision, and that vision helps us in ceremony to be able to see. And again, it's back to connecting with the creator.
Any questions coming in? Come on, people, you got to have some questions.
So I do have a question. You already mentioned how tall it is. I mean, how much it weighs. How tall does Enapai stand?
When she is standing upright,
About
I would
that
say
tall.
she's about 3 feet tall. That sound about
So-
right?
Yeah, she's about 3 feet, 10.5 pounds, and her wingspan is close to 7 feet.
Minus her missing part.
Right,
And-
minus her primary feathers.
So you're mentioning the feathers. The feather that top is a tail feather,
Correct.
not the primaries on the wing. Can we see her tail? Did you turn her around so she can?
I have
or
not
does she
done
not
that
want to
yet.
look
Let's see how she
that
takes to
direction?
that idea. Thanks, Russ.
I
She's
think
good at walking around, but she does not like when things change too much. But
There
you
we
can
go.
see she's got a beautiful, full, stark white tail. Little feather on this bird's tail at this point has molted into the 5th year tail feather. She is complete with her tail, which means there is no brown left. The feather that Todd is holding actually still has some brown mottling in it. So that was from last year, and that brown mottling indicates that the bird is not quite in its 5th or older. Now, the older the bird is, it's not easy to tell how old they are once they are in their mature feather plumage. So it's something that you just have to in the area to kind of monitor how many times they come back to the nests.
Now, the bald eagles were driven into demise in the 1800s, and one of the reasons was because of their feathers. When the Europeans came here, they realized the importance of the eagle and the feathers, and they actually put a monetary value on the eagles, unfortunately. So they started to hunt the eagles back in the 1800s, which started the population going into decline. And then in the early 1940s, the United States started using DDT, which is a pesticide. And what happened with the pesticide, as they spread it through the fields, it leaches into the soil, and from there it leaches into the streams, into the brooks, and then into the rivers. And what happened was it started to poison the fish that the bald eagles were eating. Also the osprey and probably a lot of the other shorebirds who rely on fish were being poisoned by the DDT. Unfortunately, by the late 1960s, there were no bald eagles left in Connecticut, and only eagles left in the lower 48 of the United States, almost to the point of extinction. And then in 1969, Connecticut banned DDT, and I think it was 1972 that DDT was banned federally. And a lot of that had to do with driving the eagle into demise. So once they banned DDT, the numbers started to stabilize. They stopped dropping. And then there were a couple, I think U.S. Fish and Wildlife started to try to breed bald eagles in captivity to help bring the population back. So in late 1960s, there were no bald eagles left in the state of Connecticut. And it wasn't until 1992 that the bald eagle, that we had our first nesting pair come back to the state, and actually had one successful chick fledge from that nest. Um, Interesting to note too, I think it was also 1992 that Connecticut came up with their first Endangered Species Act, and it was because of the bald eagle. And as soon as they came up with it, went right on the endangered species list. Now, it wasn't until 1999 before we had another nesting pair come into the state of Connecticut. So if you think about that, there were only two nesting pairs in the entire state of Connecticut in 1999, and that year both had nests, but neither one were successful in having chicks that fledged the nest. It really wasn't until about 2005, 2006 that we started to see a couple territories being established and chicks actually fledging from their nests. So it's really important to know, because we were literally this close to driving them into extinction. Um, and, you know, as most people know, the bald eagle is the national symbol. Really wouldn't look too good if we actually lost a species that is our national symbol. But then by about 2010, the population really started to stabilize here, and we started to seeing more and more bald eagles, and a lot more chicks fledging from the nests. This is 2020 now, and the numbers from 2019 in Connecticut, we had, you think about this, we had 64 active territories here in Connecticut, and out of that 64 active territories, we had bald eagle nests. And from those 45 bald eagle nests, we had 81 chicks fledge. So
That's
it was
amazing.
a banner year this year. Typically, we're seeing just a slight increase every year. And one of the other things is that in 2019, typically we see about 4 or 5 new territories established every year. But in 2019, we had 14 new territories established
That we
here
know of.
in Connecticut.
That we
we
know
know of, that are monitored through the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. Quite a few people actually go out and do the monitoring, so the numbers are pretty solid. But another interesting fact is we get a lot of eagles that are moving inland or on lakes. And I know of a couple places a few years ago where they were nesting on a lake, and the lake froze over, and they actually had to abandon the nests and find fresh running water.
So another question, how long do they live? If they don't mature until they're 5 years old, how long can they live?
Being babies longer, I think, solidifies family relations more so. These birds, I think the oldest one on record was 51 in captivity. I don't think that's a typical number that you're going to see a bald eagle live until, but I would say roughly in the wild they'd be lucky to live into their late 20s, early 30s. Same with captivity, depending on their environment and what brought them into a captive lifestyle in the first place. So 51 is pretty old.
And we have some other questions.
Do they nest near Manhasset? Can you encourage them to live in a certain location?
It's really up to the bald eagle where they're going to choose. And again, like Todd was just saying, they're going to choose an area where they can access fish in the lakes and the streams and the rivers. Bald eagles don't eat only fish, so they do have some variety out there. They will and often do take roadkill. They often also will hunt some small mammals and rodents. They will also steal food, because they truly are not only hunters but scavengers. So that does give them more of an ability to spread their territorial range out, but I think it really is individual per couple where they're going to decide to live. We know of some actually living in pretty much downtown cities, areas that you would never suspect, but there's just enough tree line and just enough cover and enough water source close by to some of our cities where they're actually taking on city living. which is true for a lot of different bird species.
And then another big deciding factor is when they're going to establish territory. Once they have territory established and they're in nesting season, they're extremely aggressive to defend the territory. So even if you have another bald eagle that's coming down from another state down the Connecticut River, that eagle during nesting season has got to be passing through other eagle territory. So they have to find a spot where that has not been taken or claimed as territory yet, before they can actually establish a nesting or territory of their own. And as time goes on, we have more and more territories being established. So real estate is getting a little thin.
Kind of like the osprey platforms, thanks to
Yes.
a lot
Yes.
of the team members out there that you know who you are, out there replacing osprey platforms and erecting new ones. The ospreys are thriving in our state, much more so. And we're seeing more numbers of bald eagles coming in through rehabilitation. Whenever we see a bird species come in often at our center, we can assume that that bird is doing well in our state. Not, it seems kind of ironic because they're coming in injured, but what that means is there are more of them to have more conflicts with us humans. And again, remember, about 98% of the birds that come to our center are coming in ways, injured in ways related to us humans. Now, as an eagle is flying further out and up the river looking for a new nesting territory or to establish or find a mate, as they are passing through other mated territories, what the bald eagle will do, because it does have to stop and rest, it does have to stop and hunt, but in bald eagle language, what they will often do with one another when they don't want to fight, they don't want to steal a territory or a mate, they will actually do something called bowing. They will land somewhere, they will see one another because their eyesight is so grand and so great, they can spot each other from so far away before a human eye could ever pick it up. But what they will lower, and they will, and what they are saying in that moment in time is, I acknowledge your presence of you, and I mean you no harm. So it's a really nice body language example of lessening confrontation. Enapai does do that bowing. She does it in the aviary. She does it sometimes. We always bow back. A lot of people have come through on tours and have witnessed Enapai bowing. Tiasu has also learned bowing, and our peregrine falcon, Zeppelin, is in an aviary space next to the eagles, and he has actually learned the bowing process, and he bows over and over during programs.
An interesting note I wanted to bring up here was we were asking about the size of the eagle. How high does she stand? How big is her wingspan? Um, when you talk about the largest or the biggest, I know they're always debating, is it the Philippine eagle or the harpy eagle that's the biggest eagle in the world? One of the, probably the biggest bird. Two of the main differences is how wide is the wingspan and how much the bird weighs. So to talk about how large they are, you have to consider how wide the wingspan is, how much they weigh, and actually how high they stand off of the ground.
Enapai is not as heavy as some of the females here in Connecticut. The average weight of a bald eagle in our state, the males are usually anywhere between 8 pounds and 10 pounds, let's say, and the females often are anywhere between 10 and 12 pounds. But further north you go, the bigger these birds can get, and they can get up to 14 pounds. When we first acquired Enapai, we believed Enapai to be a male based on her weight. We assumed that she was a he. That's very confusing. So when we, a couple years in, she had to go in for some blood work for some other reason, we decided to have her tested, and that's when it was revealed that Enapai truly is a female. So we are 100% sure that our bird here is a girl. Tiasu as well, we decided to go ahead and do the blood work. Tiasu is heavier than Enapai is, but not much bigger looking in size.
You want to talk about her feet a little
I
bit?
do. These feet, I just want, if you can see them, I'm hoping you can see these feet in comparison to my hand, these toes, are actually, when they're stretched out, as long as my finger, my pointer finger. So my pointer finger curved really is as long as this. Can you see that? You can't see it?
Not really.
Can you see it?
No.
Her toes are about 3.5
Is
inches
it because
long.
the foot is out of the camera?
Too far
Probably
away.
too far away.
All right, Todd, can you step to the left a little bit?
Left,
And I'll
right.
see if I can't get her. No, we're going to do a little dancing. You can see her feet right now, but if I can get a little closer. Yes? You're okay. I just want you to see my finger in relation to that toe. Now, you may have seen that she pooped, which is my signal that she might try to fly. So I'm going to back up again so Todd can come back in. If she does try to jump or bait, then I will come back into the camera once we're settled again. Please don't.
Another interesting thing to note about their feet is we were talking about how much power they can actually produce. They need that power to actually kill their prey and to hold on to the prey. But the interesting thing is bald eagles and all birds, I believe, prey, do something called ratcheting. And what that is the tendons that run down through the leg, into the foot, and into each toe run through a tendon sheath, kind of like through a straw. And the tendon actually has barbs on the outside of it, and the tendon sheath has barbs on the inside. So when the muscle constricts, it pulls the tendons closed, and those barbs actually lock together just like a socket wrench. And what that does is it helps the birds to grab heavy prey and lock onto the prey without the use of the muscle. What that does is it conserves energy, which is really important for a lot of these birds. Unfortunately, every now and again you hear the story of, typically it's more with the osprey, where the young osprey will grab a fish that's actually too large to pick up out of the water and fly off with, and they're locked in that ratcheting. And what happens is, if they don't relax enough, they can't actually release the ratcheting. And there have been incidents of the fish actually pulling the osprey underwater and the osprey drowning from that technique. Another really interesting thing is, we all know that birds don't lie down and sleep, or they don't sit down. They're always standing. And when they sleep at night, you might wonder why they don't fall off the perch. And back to the ratcheting. So when they're sleeping on a perch, they'll actually lock their toes onto the perch with the ratchet system, so they don't fall off the perch while they're sleeping.
It's important to know that while they do that, when they do ratchet, they're not using their muscles. They're all about conserving their energy at all cost. So when they do ratchet, there's no muscles involved. It's all tendons, like Todd was saying.
Yeah.
So they conserve energy that way and don't have to fight a windstorm or falling asleep.
Yep.
Yes, question.
A few questions. What predators will go after their young?
Excellent question. Now, when a baby bald eagle first hatches from its egg, it is tiny, it is helpless, it is defenseless, and it can be preyed upon by something as small as a fish crow, or any kind of raccoon, or anything that's going to climb up into the tree that could get into the nest. A red-tailed hawk, perhaps. But that is why, or a great horned owl.
Great horned owl is the
Any of the other predators out there for a small bird would definitely be able to take a small bald eagle away from its nest, unfortunately. But fortunately, they are fierce protectors of their nests. They are great parents. They're always keeping a watchful eye. So parents are usually nearby, and when babies are that small, mom doesn't leave for very long. Both mom and dad do feed their young. And if you've ever watched any of the live eagle cameras where you can watch the live streaming of nesting behavior, you'll actually see the parents come into the nest and fall those powerful, taloned, weaponed feet into these balls, these fists, so they can ever so delicately get themselves positioned in their own nest close to their little babies and feed them with these big, massive sharp curved beaks that they'll rip and tear tiny little food item pieces off the food prey that they've brought back to the nest to place gently into their babies' mouths. It's really incredible to watch. Of course, they do grow pretty rapidly. Most birds of prey grow to be as big as their moms and dads in about 5 weeks' time, usually flighted about 6 or 7 weeks, with exception to our bald eagles, who take a lot longer to get that big. It's more of a 14 to 16 or even 18-week process in some cases.
Right, and I
so
think
these birds are in the nest longer.
And as you were saying before, it takes 5 years for these birds to reach maturity. That was another big problem in the demise of the bald eagles because it took them so long. But I just want to go back for 1 second here before we go to another question.
So wait, the average maturity of all the other birds is 2 to 3.
Yeah, 2 to 3 years for all the other birds of prey. But the thing I wanted to mention was, I did not mention this before, when the fish were being poisoned by the DDT and the birds were eating the poisoned fish, what was happening was the birds were not dying from the DDT. It was causing a calcium deficiency, and when they would lay their eggs in the nest, the eggs were so soft that they would just break in the nest and not hatch. And that was the big part of their demise, a very big part of their demise.
Another question, will they nest near osprey?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Definitely, because
Yes.
osprey are nesting everywhere.
Yeah.
And anywhere. Osprey are taking over billboard signs and lines and telephone, cell phone power lines and poles and all of that, and anything along the rivers height-wise those birds are attracted to. And of course the bald eagles, kind of the same thing. They're not taking over the actual osprey nests themselves because it's not a large enough platform space for their large nest building. But they do often nest close by. The bald eagle really relies on our osprey population because, again, back to the fact that these birds are scavengers as well. They steal a lot of food from their osprey friends.
Yes, they do.
The osprey are no match for the bald eagle and the power of the bald eagle. The osprey will often just drop the fish for lack of having that confrontation and risking injury.
And just a quick fact on the osprey, out of all the birds of prey, they are the most successful hunters. So on average, an osprey will catch 92% of the prey that it actually goes after. Very impressive.
All right, I don't know if you're on screen. Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, how can a ordinary person help the environment or obtain the environment to have the raptors safe?
One big issue that we have is garbage or human debris in the environment, and one of the really big ones is fishing line.
And hooks.
And fishing line and hooks. You can pretty much go to any water source and spend a little time looking around, and you're going to find fishing line and hooks hanging from the trees or in the reeds or on the ground. Some places are a lot worse than others. Fishing line is really an awful way to die, getting tangled in fishing line. We've had a couple in the past. We actually have one right now along the Connecticut River. A young bald eagle that has a ball of fishing line wrapped around its foot, and it's wrapped so tight that the foot is becoming necrotic and it's killing off the toes. So that poor eagle will not be able to use that foot, and he will probably eventually die.
There's no capturing this bird that he's mentioning because it's fully flighted.
Right, there's no capturing the bird because he's fully flighted. We did, however, have one back in 2016 that ended up getting stuck in a tree about 70 feet up over the Connecticut River. Actually was hanging in the tree, and he had to be rescued, but unfortunately time that we were able to get him down, the damage was so severe he had fractured the leg in 5 different places. The skin was necrotic, probably systemic infection that the eagle actually didn't survive. So fishing line is a really big one.
Garbage entanglements are a real issue for all kinds of birds, not just the bald eagle, but predatory birds are also very susceptible to chemicals and pesticides that people are putting on their lawns, their gardens, their shrubbery. Anything that you put out there that's a chemical to kill something, whether it's a bug or a rodenticide to kill rats and or mice, is going to work its way into the system of our planet and our environment, and it's going to work its way up the food chain. So please just think of alternatives, use alternatives. raptorsarethesolution.org has a list of alternatives to rodenticide use, and it's a very effective list, lots of different ideas and ways to manage rodents if they are too close to the home. And of course, there are plenty of organic ways to treat your properties and your gardens that won't affect the little critters who eat the bugs, and then the predators who eat the little critters who eat the bugs, etc. So there is a lot we can all do in picking up our environment and thinking before we use products, and not out there that tell you that something is safe when it is indeed not. You'll hear that a lot from rodenticide products, that the product will not harm your dog, will not harm your cat, and certainly wouldn't harm a bald eagle because of the size of the animal. But the truth of that is this rodenticide poisoning has a cumulative effect, so it builds up in their system. So one poisoned mouse would not affect Enapai. 5 poisoned mice would. So you have to understand that this builds in the system. In fact, there is a doctor over at Tufts that just did a study recently and got her results back where she took 48, that's a lot, of red-tailed hawks from all over that were brought to Tufts because of their condition. They were all failing to thrive. These hawks all died, 48 that died. They tested these birds, and every single one of them, 100% of these red-tailed hawks, had some sort of level of rodenticide within their system. Not 70%, not 50%, 100% of the 48 birds. So it's a real issue and problem out there. This year we dealt with a lot of hawks coming in that were sick, clearly sick from rodenticide poisoning, and then we had some mysterious hawks come in that we weren't 100% sure if it was rodenticide or something else, and we had these birds tested through a necropsy, which is like an autopsy for animals. The necropsy revealed that these birds, and there were 3 of them, had died from pesticide poisoning. The scary part is the pesticide that they targeted, that they found, that they identified, is something called chloridane. Chloridane was outlawed in 1988, yet it's killing our birds today. So it is in our soil, it is resurfacing, it is being re-ingested by earthworms, and again, that chain reaction goes into play. So please, please, please use products that are not going to be hazardous to your health, to your animals, to your children's health, and of course to the environment and all the animals we share the environment with.
And please don't use glue traps. Glue traps are a horrifying way to die, and they target pretty much any animal that's small enough to get stuck on them. Every now and again we get a bird that's been stuck on a glue trap, and it's almost impossible to save a bird from the glue traps. And as far as rodenticide goes, there are so many alternatives to using poison. Like Christine was saying before,
Raptors
are the solution.org. They have a lot of really good alternative methods to rodenticide.
The way to remember it, Todd, I just want to say it, is RATS,
RATS,
R-A-T-S.
yes.
Raptors are the solution.org.
One of the best ways to deal with rodent problem is to predator proof wherever the rodents are getting into. Rather than using poison,
Exclusion.
you need to do exclusion work where you're keeping that, blocking any spot where that rodent or the rodents might be getting into. That is the best long-term solution for problem with rats and mice and other rodents.
Another thing that we're actually seeing a lot more of in the past few years, so much so that we invested in a lead testing machine at our center. So now we can test birds on our own rather than have to bring each case in to a veterinary hospital for the blood work and then have the blood work ship out and wait for results, because lead poisoning is very prominent in a lot of our birds that are eating any shorebirds or fish. And unfortunately, where they're ingesting most of this lead is in things like lead sinkers, or when hunters and sportsmen use lead ammunition. Now, I have been told many times about lead ammunition being something that most people will never replace, because when you are doing large game hunting, the thing they like is the spread. When they shoot the large animal, it spreads and makes sure it brings the animal down.
Shotgun
well,
pellets.
all those shotgun pellets made of lead are now in that animal's flesh, in the organs, and when, let's say, a deer is gutted before it is taken off to be processed, is often left behind in nature, in the environment. Animals come along and ingest those lead shot pellets. So we do deal with a lot more lead poisoning, and if we don't get a bird in soon enough displaying lead symptoms, and we don't get treatment started right away, it's going to be a fatal scenario or a fatal outcome. So lead is another really, really bad toxic, as well as levels in a lot of the fish, which makes it very difficult when you have a nonprofit wildlife rehabilitation center that dine on fish, because we get a lot of our fish donated from local fishermen and the environmental police officers skate fish, and we don't turn that away. We love it. Right now we're stocked to the gills literally in our freezers, so we're good for now. So this is not a plea for more fish. We appreciate all those food donations, anything natural from our environment, for fear of what might be in it. But with fish, we don't have a lot of options unless we're purchasing each fish. We are going through here at a place called Hope currently, we're going through 14 fish per day, because we have still in rehab 5 different osprey and then the 2 bald eagles. So we're going through a lot of fish. We go through a lot of food, and we cannot take your mice and your rats that you have trapped, because we can't be 100% sure that those rats or those mice are clean or clear from rodenticides. Even if you're not using them, your neighbors might be. So we do have to purchase our food. It's very expensive. If you'd like to support a place called Hope, you can do so by going to www.aplacecalledhoperaptors.com. There is a donate tab. I also believe on our Facebook page, A Place Called Hope on Facebook, there is also a donate tab that you can donate to us that way as well. We can use your help in so many ways, especially during this critical time where COVID has stopped us from social programming and presentation style programming and fundraisers and festivals, all the things that we're used to doing this time of year. You can certainly donate money, which always goes to the food fund at this point. You can also donate wish list items, which you can find on our website under How You Can Help. You can also donate your time in doing things for us, like picking something up for us or driving something somewhere, or we actually have a mouse run to pick up mice in Brockton, Massachusetts coming up this week. I think it's Wednesday. It'd be nice to have somebody be able to help us in this way, where they drive and pick the load of mice up to bring back to the center, because while we are taken off-site away from the center, that means we are not providing the care to the birds that we're still managing. We have been managing on average between 4 and 5 birds per day, and right now, the last couple days, it's only been about 2 per day. So just for a couple days, 2 per day. But it's been a busy season. Currently, I am still bottle feeding those baby mourning doves that you all brought me. I love them dearly, but it has been every single day since March, bottle feeding those babies. So I feel like a new mother. You know how that is? Yeah, got to wake up and feed the baby. Got to, before going to bed, got to make sure the babies are fed and their crops are full. Birds have something called crops. Most birds, owls do not, but the crop is the pre-digestion stomach where most of the food digests or pre-digests before it goes through their system to their actual stomach.
All right. Well, I want to thank Todd and Christine from a place called Hope. I really appreciate this visit with Enapai. Thank you, Enapai.
It'd be so nice if
she
bowed.
looks so proud there. A place called Hope is located in Killingworth. You can come and do tours at the facility. You can go on to the website, a place called Hope Raptors.com. I always leave out the Raptors. A place called Hope Raptors.com. You can sign up for tours. They are typically on Mondays.
YouTube.
And you can also, this is just the first of our programs. We're going to be doing these every Saturday, or the next 3 Saturdays in October at 10 o'clock. You can tune into Facebook Live and watch them. You can also see them on our YouTube channel. You can visit meigspointnaturecenter.org, go to the Virtual Learning Center, and see all of the additional materials. So we'll be putting up a few things about bald eagles on the website.
And Native American heritage.
And their connection with the Native Americans particularly. So I also want to give a shout out today to the Friends of Hammonasset. They are the ones that are sponsoring this event.
Thank you to the Friends of Hammonasset.
They are also the ones that are feeding the animals at the Nature Center, so I always want to thank them for that because since currently the building is closed, that's the only way we're able to feed the animals. So, everybody, tune in on Tuesday, 11 o'clock, Tuesdays through Friday, Facebook Live. I'll be doing programs from the Nature Center or thereabouts. And thank you again to a place called Hope, Enapai, Todd, Christine, everyone. We will see you next time.
And aho.